What's up, dude?
What's up?
I wanted to talk to you about a day last year, April 23rd, 2022. Pretty big day in your life.
Definitely one of the biggest days in my life for multiple reasons. So it was a Texas Iron Man, full Iron Man. I've been training for like 7 months. The first triathlon I've ever done, anything like that really, outside of, as an endurance athlete, high altitude climbing's been my venue.
So first triathlon, and first triathlon also being a first Ironman.
Yeah, never even been on a road bike since I was 13 or 15 years old or anything like that. So my brother had kind of decided he was going to do it. He and I are real close, and he kind of challenged me, like, do you want to do this with me? And at first I was like, nah, not really my thing. I love pushing myself, endurance sports and all that, but I'm not as much into the race element of it, the big crowds and all that. I'd rather be out there in the element doing these things, So, but I decided, let's do it, paid the fee, and then the journey began, that week, start training.
When was the race scheduled for?
It was six months out from when we started training, which is kind of like an accelerated training period, but I wasn't out of shape. I was more in running 10Ks, lifting a lot of weights, doing some breath hold training for free diving, and just like your average guy, maybe, a little more of a gym rat, definitely doing more cardio probably than your average person, but I wasn't an endurance athlete. I hadn't climbed a mountain in a couple of years, so I wasn't in that elite shape yet. But, once you decide to undertake something like that, you go all in. So
you have to. Started
with a loose training protocol I read on the internet and just kind of escalated to the point, running half marathons and putting in 5-6 hour days, 2-a-days, almost every day, where my brother and I would break up our work schedule because we work together. And
that's awesome. You train with your brother.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be able to bounce off of each other, and we only got to have a few training sessions together because we worked together. So one would be going, but it was nice to just have someone to bounce off your training, how to go. What'd you do today?
Just to compete like brothers.
Yeah,
in the sense of if he did this time or.
Well, originally we want the race was gonna be a flat out race, and then a day or two before
against each other.
Who's gonna be the fastest kind of thing, and swimming we're about the same. He's a little bit faster runner. He had a groin issue. I'm a better biker, so it's gonna be interesting to see who could win. And
was it his first also?
Oh yeah.
First triathlon?
First triathlon, first anything. So we just jumped into it. And we put in the work though. We trained really hard. We were definitely ready for it. And then, the clock just keeps, with anything like that, the clock keeps ticking. And then 6 months is 4 months, and then 3 months is 2 months, is 1 month. And now it's 3 weeks out, and all the training tells you start slowing down, no more big runs, and you're just how can I not do a big run? I gotta do this marathon after 150 miles. I gotta do a big run, and so that was an interesting part of it too.
The taper.
The taper, yeah, it's hard to taper when you're preparing for something like that, and then a day turns to an hour, and then it's the morning of the race, and me and my brother are waking up and eating bananas and whatever the hell else you're supposed to do, and the excitement, the intensity is there, and it's the work's been put in, and it's just some of the biggest career rugby matches or big summit days in my career, and the biggest moments athletically in your life, you get that feeling of excitement, the work's in, now let's go run the machine and let's just see what I got. Exactly, let's get on the stage. And so there we are, lining up before the race, little chill in the air, swims first. I'm excited about the swim.
Where's that again? In Texas?
In Texas, yeah, in the Woodlands.
Oh, nice.
And,
outside of Houston.
It's beautiful. Nice day for it, other than it was the windiest Texas Iron Man in history. So on the bike, we were looking to face like 20, 30 mile an hour headwind for 50 miles.
Get some.
So that was like,
it's flat at least.
Sort of. They changed the route to where like you do a bunch of hills on the interstate. It wasn't, you know, like one of the, it's not like Kona or anything, but it wasn't flat either. But the good thing was every hill you went up, you got to go back down. So it was a there and back kind of thing. And that headwind did become a tailwind. So
nice.
At some point, you know, it was a lot of fun flying. But so, you know, we lined up for the start. The swim is one of my strengths. I'm ready to rip, jump in the water. I had not trained in like open brown water or this is my first actual competition race in the pool. I was just destroying my swims at good speeds.
Where were you swimming? Do you remember, like 100 splits or anything like that?
No, I would do the 2.14 miles in about an hour and 15 hours.
Oh, that's great, dude.
Minutes.
It's just over 2 minutes, 100.
Yeah,
that's great.
So, because mostly that's, you know, I would do on a training session somewhere between 50 and 100 laps.
That's great. It's like 215, 220 per 100.
Yeah. So like that's like the swim was going to be a strength. In this race for me. So.
It's usually the biggest difficulty for most people, especially first timers.
Yeah, and I haven't done a lot of just pool swimming, but once I started to do it, it was something that like, just because of my free diving and my mountain climbing, like I'm able to control my breath and my heart rate like a little bit better. And I kind of, it feels good almost when I'm pushing myself cardiovascularly, holding my breath, as opposed to some people get fear, you know, response when they do that. So we jump in the water, start swimming. And maybe literally less than 10 minutes in, another swimmer, like I kind of caught a heel to the face, get a nosebleed, and kind of have like a mild, what I thought was like a panic attack. You know, like all of a sudden, this dirty water, and my respiratory rate, I cannot catch my breath. So I switched to a breaststroke from freestyle just to kind of regain my composure, and it didn't happen. I was still huffing and puffing, and you know, I've never had a panic attack in my life, but I'm like, damn, this is a panic attack. You know, what else could be going on here?
10 minutes into the fucking race.
10 minutes into the race, and then, you know, I was able to kind of come in and out of freestyle and tread water a little bit and just gut the swim out. Like, of all the things I've ever done in my life, including, you know, some multiple climbs on Denali and big climbs all over the world, like looking back, that swim was hard. And my brother and I, like 2-3 days before the race, we decided, like, let's do it together, man. Like, I'll meet you at the bike, and we're gonna stick together during the race, because we trained together. It was gonna be like brother versus brother, and then at some point it evolved into like, let's fucking do it together. You know?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So he's waiting at the bike, and I show up like about 20-30 minutes late. So
he knew something was off.
He knew something was off because he knew my swimming was a strength. Like there was no way it would take me 2 hours.
Like if anything, you'd be ahead of him.
Right, I'd be waiting for him at the bike. So I meet him at the bike, and he can tell, you know, something's a little off. He's like, "What happened, man?" Like, and I told him, "I don't know, man. I had like a panic attack or something. I feel like I might have pulled a muscle in my rib, an intercostal muscle, just from altering my stroke. Just you know." Because I wasn't able to take rest breaths. Like usually 3-4 strokes in a breath is what I trained at. I was breathing almost every breath just to get through it.
Like you feel like you couldn't get that diaphragmatic lift,
right? I couldn't. I had to literally stroke breathe, and that causes all sorts of metabolic changes and acidosis. And I had learned that through the training, you know. So I'm thinking of something like that. I had a panic attack because I got kicked in the face and the dirty water, and I'm used to mostly swimming in a pool and blah blah blah. And he's like, "Well, are you ready?" He's like, "You ready to get on the bike? Let's do it." So,
like, that's great. I'm sorry, but
yeah, but he gave me a good eval. He's like, "You're all right."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm all right."
Beast,
you know,
right?
I just swam 2 miles after a panic attack. I think I might have done a little something to my ribs, but like, you know,
it's like this is what
happens.
This is
the Iron Man. It's not supposed to be easy. Like, something happened earlier. Like, we got to get on. I got to make up time on the bike. Let's go.
Right.
So we get on the bike, and honestly, I did well on the bike, I guess, in a sense, because I was seated and able just to pump and grind it out. And the bike part, that uphill part was brutal, but and the upwind part was brutal, but I did well on the bike. 115 miles, a little less than 7 hours. And at that point, when I'm finishing up with the bike, it's like, all right, let's get to this marathon now. Because
that's great. You're still clocking 20-ish.
Yeah, I'm still doing all right. I lost those 30 minutes in the swim, but I'm still like, man, I'm well within I want to do like 15 hours is my goal, well within that range. And then we take off on the marathon part. And I think it was probably mile 8 when things started to add up, like physically and mentally, where I was, my heart rate was spiking to 180, which is never, for me to get to 180, I got to do something radical.
Yeah, it's tipping max.
And then when I would get to a decent speed again, it would do it again. So I was walk running the last third. I had severe cramps, which at the time I thought were nutrition related, but I'd been advised by other Ironmen on how to keep up with nutrition during the race, so I was religious about it. So it didn't make a lot of sense for me to cramp from dehydration or nutrition.
Where were you cramped specifically?
In my legs, multiple times. I had to lay out, stretch, get the calves, quads, lower body, some upper body stuff too, and I just dogged it out for the rest of the marathon. I finished just over 15 hours.
Nice.
And me and my brother crossed the finish line together, smile on my face, feeling pretty ragged.
Yeah.
But it's an Ironman. That's what I'm thinking at this point. It's
right.
It wasn't even worse than some of the climbs I've done. I've had more misery and high altitude climbs. But due to all the, issues I was having, I went to the medical tent. They gave me IV fluids. They kind of checked me over. Go back to the hotel that night. My girlfriend was there with me, and she could tell something wasn't right, but here I am, macho, BS, I'm fine. I just did an Ironman. I got a pulled rib. I'm not supposed to feel good, but I couldn't go to sleep, and I was shaking, and I'm still thinking, well, a lot of endorphins, I just destroyed my body. Who knows what's going on inside my body.
That's weird.
And then I still just was restless and had, these chest pains throughout the night, and she kept trying to get me to go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital around 4 a.m. that morning, and they put an EKG on me, and the doctor, I'll never forget to this day, his face turned white, and he said, "You're not having a heart attack, you're dying. Half your heart is off, it's not working. We need to go directly into the cath lab and put stents in your heart." And here I am thinking I maybe have some emphysema or some
got
issue
kicked in the face and that pushed
something happened, or I tore a rib, or maybe a cardiac atrial fib episode or something not massive heart attack.
Right.
So what had happened was, in that first 15 minutes of the swim, there was a sclerotic plaque in one of my main arteries that had built up over time, and
the kick
must have caused, in the cold water and the brown water and the excitement and all that, caused some increased contractility in the vessels of my heart that caused a piece of sclerotic plaque to fall and block the vessel completely.
So it's not like the sculptor hitting the rock 99 times and then the 100th one that cracks it open, something had built up.
It is kind of like that, because I had built up, unknowingly to myself, I had built up sclerosis in my chest, and it kind of runs genetically in my family. Some of it was probably lifestyle and diet and other things that I've been doing over the years that have caused more of a buildup, but a lot of it was just genetic, and it was like a time bomb from what they told me. At some point, it could have happened at work, it could have happened when I was diving, it was going to happen at some point. It just so happened in the beginning of the swim on the Ironman. So I didn't do myself any favors by pushing through it, because what happened is, I went for 14 more hours in the throes of a double widowmaker. And
double widowmaker, define that.
Meaning not only one sclerotic blockage in my main left ventricle, two. So it was doubly blocked.
So half the heart operating as normal.
The right side of the heart operating, the left side shut down.
So first triathlon, first Iron Man, doesn't know what's going on, has some pain, some considerable pain, but as an athlete self-diagnoses and says, okay, some kind of intercostal thing, maybe a torn pec or a rib, but it was actually half your heart had totally conked out.
Well, it had become blocked at that point, and then over the next 15 hours, that's when, because the blockage, just like if you put a tourniquet on your arm,
right,
your arm's going to die.
Right.
The tourniquet was placed by the blockage in the heart. So
you had a heart attack during an Ironman.
I had a heart attack at the beginning of
not during an Ironman. The first 10 minutes of an Ironman.
Right.
And then finished under good time still, right? Like what was the drop dead time?
It was the drop dead time 17 hours and I was under 16.
Which is still respectable.
Still respectable. It was like worse than what I thought it would be, you know, and like my brother and I trained like almost identically and he was doing so well, I'm feeling so good. I was like, damn, dude, maybe I just was too bulked up. I shouldn't have been lifting weights. Like, all this scenarios going through my head, how to do better next time.
Right.
You know?
Ultra competitor.
Yeah, I'm just like, I can't believe I trained so hard and I struggled through this thing. You know, I'm glad.
But it was a fucking heart attack.
Yeah, so it was and not a, you know, they call it a widowmaker for a reason.
A double widowmaker.
Yeah. So 2 stints in, and then the next day I'm in the cardiac ICU, and like my vitals start plunging, and they put a balloon device into my heart to help perfuse the heart while it was under all this stress.
What's it for? Like to just try to...
The pump is basically, since your heart isn't, because that tissue's dead, it's basically pushing blood into that area to try to keep it perfused, even though it's not doing it on its own. So like as your heart would beat, the balloon sends another beat back. So at least there's blood flowing through the area that had like stopped working in my heart.
Got it.
And then, you know, fast forward 8 or 9 days, I'm finally out of the hospital. I think I called you when I was out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Let
I
you
stopped
know.
you on my bike, dude. I remember when you called because I was on the bike and you were. I just figured it was gonna be like a post, you know, race after action reporter. Like, dude, I did it. This is how it went. I'm okay. I'm like kind of cruising, listening to you. And then when you start telling the story, I was like, okay, I need to stop and like put the kickstand down and be like, damn. And I remember we were on the phone for like an hour because I was like, I'm fucking glad you're alive, dude. Number one, but then I was in amazement to hear the story because like, it's impossible. Or from what I would think or believe. Or
every cardiologist that I've talked to since then has trouble explaining where I am right now, but how did I, with a double widowmaker, make it 14 hours without going into cardiac arrest and dying?
What do they say?
Yeah, you know, some people just say miracle, and I think that's a word that gets thrown around, and I believe in miracles, but miracles happen. They're more intricate.
There's a reason.
There's more intricate. It's not just lightning. God sends down a lightning bolt and says, "Yeah, you know, I'm saving your life." I think miracles.
Like you are a doctor yourself. Like you have to be like.
Right. So to me, like it's more intricate than that, and their explanation is because of the altitude training that I'd done, because of the training that I'd done for this Ironman. I had collateralization around the vessels of my heart so that blood was able to pump from newly developed vessels from training so hard to pump around the blockage. Because if I didn't have those collateral vessels, I would have gone into cardiac arrest or had a stroke because I'm not getting enough blood to my brain and my heart, and I would have just died right there. So that was kind of the explanation on how I was able to survive for that long while still competing, you know. So that I had collateralization around my heart and I was just pushing it.
The other training you had done, endurance, climbing especially, right? Obviously at operating at high altitude, created new...
No doubt it saved my life.
Wow.
Had I not been an endurance athlete, I'd be dead. There's no that's not even a question.
Dude, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I always thought, like, okay, the cardiovascular endurance, you know, like improvement, and like the reason people do it is like obviously the heart is a muscle, and like making it work more, making it pump blood more efficiently, increasing work capacity, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't know that actually created new vessels.
What happens with a deprivation of oxygen, whether it be from training or high altitude, your blood vessels send signals out that basically cause, you know, neovascularization, which is creation of new blood vessels. And if you're doing over years, like what you do, if you did an angiogram on your heart, it's going to look more like mine or more like a dog's heart, which has collateral vessels around it, other than just the main branches that are known, anatomical named branches. You develop new ones by depriving yourself of oxygen and pushing yourself to the limit. You do grow new ones. Some people are born that way too, and maybe I was born that way and I grew new ones, but that's the explanation on like how I was able to finish the race without like dying.
They basically picked up the load.
It picked up the load and it went around. It was able to go around the blockage. You know, it'd be like if you had a tourniquet on your arm, but there was vessels that went over the tourniquet and were able to perfuse your hand still, and so your hand wouldn't lose total blood. And that's the explanation of what happened.
Had you heard of that before? I mean, like I said, as a doctor,
I had heard of it as a doctor. Neovascularization, you learn about that in school, how like blood vessels can grow and change and.
But had you seen it in practice?
No, not necessarily. As a climber, you definitely read about it, learn about it, and know that like it's a physiological change that happens over time at altitude.
I'd never read about it in diving.
Yeah.
So like that's why when you were talking about it, I was like, how the fuck I never think of being heard of it.
Breath hold diving can create it too, but it's even more. It's more of like hard physical exertion and oxygen depletion, not as like free diving. You know, the best thing you can do is be as calm as possible and heart rate as low as possible and use as little oxygen as possible.
So that's why the correlation with climbing is much more.
Right, because the correlation with climbing and just those moments where you're sucking wind so hard and you just keep going. You know, like even in a jog or a run or uphill, whatever you're doing.
That's output plus heart rate positive correlation, whereas underwater it's inverse.
Exactly.
So they need the positive correlation to grow, to create the growth, obviously.
Right. So there's no doubt that, and I was told over and over and over again, if you hadn't trained this way, you'd be dead. If you weren't an athlete, you'd be dead. And really, in certain ways, some people, cardiologists said, if you were training for a heart attack. You were training, like in this Iron Man, which is, when you get to talking about miracles, like to me, miracles are like intricate. It's not, like I said, God just sends a lightning bolt. I'm going to save your life. It's not that way. It's my brother challenged me to do the Iron Man. Me training so hard, helping create these new vascularization, helping create better airways and all these other things. Like, you know, I remember one of the cardiologists saying, you were training to survive a heart attack in a sense. You know, you've been almost training for the past 5 years. This was going to happen to you genetically. But because of your lifestyle choices,
your preparedness for it.
You're prepared. You could not have trained better to survive a heart attack, which to me, that's where the miracle part of it all comes in. And then obviously, like when we get to the recovery, to me, that's where I find just the unbelievable nature of like what's happened to me from then into now. Well, I was still in heart failure 4.5, 5 months out from April, from that event. Massive heart failure, ejection.
So like limited movement, mobility, ability, physical
and
energy,
then
etc.
Really, you know, mentally I'm a gritty motherfucker. So like I would get up every morning and go walk 3-4 miles, like just try, like I gotta do it, I gotta get better. But you know, I still was in heart failure, ejection fraction of 30, which is, you know, at that point, they're talking about putting a defibrillator in my chest so I don't go into cardiac arrest. And that's
Explain what the fracture.
So an ejection fraction is the amount of blood that your left ventricle of your heart pumps out with each pump. Should be in a normal person like 50 to 65. Athletes definitely like in that 55, 65 range. It doesn't go to 100. It's not like that. But
got it.
30 is failure.
Basically, just mean it's efficient. Like
30 is failure. 30, you're at risk for cardiac arrest.
And that's what you are. 30.
30, you're unable to run or compete. Free diving's out of the question. Climbing's out of the question. Really, like
life.
A good 5-6 mile run's kind of out of the question. People can do it, but it's just it'd be like running with 10 backpacks on and a bag over your face or something like it. It's not.
You got to really not be there. Yeah.
So I'm at 4 months into this recovery, and my ejection fraction's still there. And I think, to me, like the proudest moment of all of it is looking back, like on the journals that I was keeping. That when I read them, it's hard not to get emotional about this.
No, that's good.
When I read them, I was saying stuff to myself like, if I have an ejection fraction of 30, 35, I will be the baddest motherfucker in the world with an ejection fraction of 35. I will run. I will swim. I will free dive again. And it's amazing to read it now, to see like just that mindset. And I think in addition to the hyperbarics, which we'll talk about, it's that mindset that I had that this is not the end of my athletic career. It's not the end of my life. No matter what, I'm going to become a freak again. I'm going to be able to do the things I want to do with my life. I'm going to be able to push myself. And if pushing myself with an ejection fraction of 30 means running 12-minute miles, I'm going to do it. I'll do it every day. And then I'll create more collateralization than I ever had before, and I'll become a new animal. This is stuff that I'm writing in heart failure when everyone else is telling me
just that glimmer of hope.
Yeah, and everyone else is just, their attitude was, you're so blessed to be alive and this, that, and the other. I felt the same way too, but that's not enough. I wanted to regain who I was, or just become even stronger because of it. And I remember one of the cardiologists at Memorial Hermann said, when I asked him if I could be able to do an Iron Man again, or free dive or climb, he said, you did an Iron Man with a double Widowmaker, so there's no limit to what you'll be able to do. We just got to see what happens over 6-8 months with how your heart responds. But the fact that you did what you did, it's likely that you'll be able to be an athlete again. You'll be able to get to push yourself, to do the things that if you could do this, then you have a good chance at a really good recovery because of who you are. And I'll never forget that. It was a high compliment, the highest compliment. But I'm still, 4 months out, and really what happened is when I got back to New Orleans after I got out of the ICU, I'd been doing hyperbaric research as a veterinarian with Dr. Keith Von Meter. We did multiple research projects on pigs that revealed new medical discoveries with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And he called me the day I got back to New Orleans, and he said, you need to come dive in my tank. You're technically an employee of mine. I'll do it as a courtesy. I'll meet you there every day after work. He met me for 65 days straight. And I went into the tank for an hour and a half. And
why 65 days?
65 days is the max that you can do hyperbarics without risking potential damage, because after 30 or 40 days, it can actually start to change the telomeres in your DNA, positive or negative, it's an unknown, but generally after 65 days, it's you need to stop for a while, because there can be too much oxygen that can cause free radical damage and scavenging and things like that. So
So there had to have been a test done over a longer period of time to where they found 65 days to be the sweet spot.
Seemingly so. Hyperbarics is still, unfortunately, it's mostly just used for head trauma and wounds, neonatal, hypoxygen events, things like that. But there's small things that they use hyperbarics for now.
I say that about the 65 because there's a behavioral psychology study that I actually drew data from about 66 days being the pertinent point for habit forming. And it was done over, it was either a 128-day span or a yearly long span. And there was a Swedish scientist, I forget his name, but found that 66 days was the sweet spot to where there was maximal retention of the habit, ability to continue performing it habitually.
There may be some correlation.
I wonder,
there,
because the fact that you said 65, and
and
I'm like, dude, I wonder, because if they had to have done more than 65, right? They likely didn't just say, okay, 65, stop. They probably went longer and then looked at the data after the fact. And
it was kind of interesting. That wasn't the original goal, was 65. Originally,
of course.
Von Meter said, let's do it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then one thing he noticed is when I would go into the chamber, he'd take my vitals, and I had like a pretty severe heart murmur every time I'd go in. And then about more than half the time when I came out of the chamber, the murmur was gone. So his theory is that, when I was under...
Which going into this is what he had was theory.
All he had was theory.
All he had was theory.
And it's mostly his theory.
Anecdotal.
Yeah, and it's still scoffed at. Most cardiologists will tell you, nah, that's not going to happen. It's not going to make a big difference. It can cause damage. I even had people in my own medical family tell me, it might not be a good thing to go in there.
What was he doing? He was doing this with animals beforehand? Like that's how he tested the theory, so to speak?
No, he's been doing it with injured divers at the rigs and stuff for 30, 40 years. And then he's extrapolated from actual experiences with divers. That's how we've come up with some of the experience we've done, where we put a tourniquet on a pig for 6 hours on its arm, then to where pretty much you're losing circulation completely and necrosis is starting to happen. And then we put the pigs down at 60 feet with the oxygen, and actually it bypasses the tourniquet through bone marrow, which was previously unknown to science. The other experiment I've done with him was another medical discovery where we bleed out a pig, give it fluid back, and then put it in the chamber. The ones that go in the chamber after almost all live. The ones that don't die. So that's another 2 medical discoveries I've had with this man. And I can't say enough about him because he does all this like philanthropically. It's not a money thing. In fact, he's spent millions and millions. He lives a humble life, and all of his money has gone into his hyperbaric research. He's a ER doctor with hyperbaric specialty, but he's almost 80, still works nights, ER.
Awesome.
Like he's an unbelievable human being, and I strongly believe I wouldn't have had the recovery that I had today, where, going back to what we were talking about earlier, about 5 months in, I had an ultrasound done. And at 5 months, I'm expecting an improvement in my injection fraction. Right. And it wasn't. It was still 30. So that was like a crushing blow.
How were you feeling, though?
I started to feel better. I started to feel stronger. I was on the bike again. I wasn't having as much pericardial pain because I had, for about 8 weeks, I had severe pericarditis, which is just... anyone who's had it or known anyone who had it knows that it was way worse than any part of the heart attack. Other than maybe 1 or 2 days when I was in the ICU, I had some like extreme pain. But the pericarditis was like really physically the biggest challenge, and mentally too, because it wouldn't go away. And when it'd go away, sometimes it'd come back 3-4 days later. I'd be back to where I couldn't sleep at night because this buildup of fluid around my heart would just throb and throb and throb. So there's a lot of like tough nights, man, fighting off like taking NSAIDs because I didn't want to take NSAIDs because it could delay the healing of my heart muscle. So it was just it's a weird constant battle with pain that I definitely grew from that, you know, just from the long-term experience in that pain. It made me, it's just like sometimes I'll have a dog patient that comes in and like my own dog, he had a broken leg, hit by a car, shot, and then sometimes animals like that or people like that, because of the suffering they've gone through, air just tastes sweeter. Life is better because you can look back on what it was before compared to, you know, what a good day, a regular day is a great day. For people don't realize how great life is, and you shouldn't have to have, I always loved life, but after this experience, it's like I'm living in heaven, you know? I wake up every day with a smile on my face. I go for a jog and just breathe the air in, and it's a miracle every day, because where I was at 4 or 5 months, still in heart failure. Then you go to 7 months out, a little bit after my final hyperbaric treatment. I go see my cardiologist. At this point, I'm starting to jog again. I'm biking, and I'm thinking, fuck this ejection fraction. I don't even care, because my parents are so worried. What's the ejection fraction? At this point in my mind, I was like, I don't care about that number. I will not be defined by that number. 35, 45, doesn't matter. I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna push myself. And my mindset was, if I could collateralize my heart up to this point in my life, then maybe I can just collateralize it to a freakish point where I can be back to normal with an ejection fraction of 30. And here I am doing all this research on ejection fractions and, you know, trying to create a path logically to where, like, I could get back to free diving, which, you know, like we talked about, that's my thing. I'm blessed to have just such a deep passion. I feel like few people have something. Artists have it, you know, certain people have it, but I have something that when I do it, I feel like this is what I was meant to do. I feel that way sometimes as a veterinarian.
More than your medical practice.
More than my medical practice. I never feel more alive or more like my true self than when I'm in the ocean hunting fish. And it's not about killing the fish, it's about being in that fourth dimension of the ocean, you know. And then people, when I, you know, in my family, they try to like push that goal away from me a little bit, like, you know, free diving, there's other things in life, you know. After this heart attack, you don't need that. You don't, you know, and it's hard for them to understand. I'm looking at them like, you don't need that, but you don't know what I need.
This is what keeps my hope alive. This
is what, literally, and Dr. Von Meter was one of the only people when I would ask him, because I asked all these doctors the whole time, even when I was on the table.
Can I do this again?
Dying.
On the table.
Literally, when I was they were putting the stents in me, I asked the doctor multiple times, like, am I going to be able to free dive after this? And he just looked at me like, shut up. You might be.
I'm trying to save your life.
Yeah, I'm trying to save your life. But that's just how much it means to me. And I feel blessed, to have that passion. But, you know, a week ago, I was in Costa Rica, diving, shooting big tunas, diving deep, shooting cuberas, and
yeah, man,
to go from that hospital bed to 70 feet down in the ocean, I can't, there's just no words. The ride home, tears just flowing from my eyes, just knowing
This is just last week.
Last week, yeah, just riding home in the blue water after making challenging dives. I feel good, my heart doesn't hurt, I'm not breathing hard. Just to have that happen, there's no way. If you could ask me truthfully, God came down here and sat at this table and said, look, we can go back, you can run the Iron Man and not have a heart attack, and your heart will be fine. You want to do that? I would say, hell no. Let's do it all again. I have changed. The essence of me has changed. Physically, spiritually, mentally. I'm a different person. I'm still the same person, but it's just it's a different me. It's a deeper, on every level. Like when I train, just my daily encounters with people, I'm able to let the small shit slide. I don't get angry. I don't get frustrated. just because I'm just so blessed to look back at just the past 8 months and all the other possible outcomes that could have happened from this. One, dying in the race, and that's it. Brendan Batt died during an Ironman. It happens all the time.
Right. You're a statistic.
If you follow Ironman, you know people just drop dead.
Same thing on the rigs, right? Like, we lose a diver a year at least.
Yeah, so people die. You know, that's the first miracle that I survived it. But just to be able to go from that hospital bed, and really from that 4-month out point when I was still in heart failure, to where I am now, to where when I did the Bruce protocol and we just jogged past my cardiologist and I said, Jake, you know, had some dark days in that place, you know, and one of the monuments in my comeback is about 7 months out from the heart attack. They put me on the uphill treadmill with the EKG and an ultrasound rigged up, and he said, I'm gonna let you go until you can't, you know, push yourself here. And after 27 minutes, he said, just stop. Like, there's no reason.
Which most people, for people that don't know, most people cap out on that, but under 20 minutes.
Anything over 20 is when you're back to being
totally.
elite.
Some people, I mean, I would say the average person, 15 minutes is even a struggle.
12 to 15 minutes, you're like a normal person, and they usually stop it. He just wanted to see, because he knows who I am and that I am going to push myself.
Were they all in there too? Like,
yeah, that was a beautiful part of it too, is like these nurses, everyone who had, you know, been there. You know, because when I first came to see that cardiologist, I met his whole staff. They were all, you know, they had heard my story. It's a different story than what you hear in cardiology a lot. A young athlete having these just catastrophic heart attacks. So everybody, you know, sympathized with that for me. And then they were just in my corner, you know. And then another one of the darkest periods was, you know, 3-4 weeks out. Like I said, every day I'd walk on the levee, and I'm walking on the levee by my parents' house, and the lights go out. I blacked out and fell to the ground and looked up at the sky and thought, fuck, this is it. Like, I'm gonna die here.
Similar feelings to like what you'd already known?
No, it was the lights went out, man. Like, I fainted. I got lightheaded, and then I woke up on the ground, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't really move. And I know enough as a doctor to know that, like, I thought that was it, you know. My heart just stopped a little bit. It's not getting enough blood to my brain. I'm gonna stroke out and die pretty much. And of all like my climbs and all the crazy stuff I've done.
Don't tell me I'm gonna die in the fucking levee.
Yeah, I'm gonna die on the levee in the suburbs of
Metairie.
Metairie, just laying here. They're gonna find my body.
Let me die on the mountain or underwater.
Yeah, like why here? And then I kind of got up and fell down again and struggled and like got back to my parents' house, and then I went to that cardiology, and I'm on a wheelchair, and I'm pale, and they're worried that I'm like dying, you know. And to have that same medical staff, they all, when I did the Bruce protocol, every one of them wanted to be in the room, and just
to see it.
It was just, they were all watching a miracle happen.
Oh, dude, that's sick.
It was just, everyone was just so stoked to see this guy who they all felt so sorry for, you know, a good athlete, just struck down, like, in certain ways. Before I was able to wrap my head around it and realize that, like, this obstacle that I've been presented with is an opportunity to grow. It took me weeks to get that mindset, and that is what I attribute a lot of my recovery to. But before that, I kind of felt, even though I had survived it, like a victim was just kind of struck down by an invisible bolt of lightning that just shot to the heart. Just fucking, why me? Why? I lived a pretty clean life. I was an athlete, training, eating right, doing things right. Like, why did I have to suffer this? And then that's just a terrible attitude. It's a natural attitude to have when something catastrophic happens.
Definitely natural.
But it's not the right attitude. The obstacle is the way. And once you realize that, your life changes, because every tough instance that you're faced with is an opportunity to prove to yourself you can overcome it and to grow from it. And it's easy to say that. It's easy to read about that. And it's a little harder to put it in practice, but it's not as hard when you're faced with what I was faced with, because I had two options. You know, the cardiologist told me I should get on antidepressants, and I kind of laughed at her. I said, if you say that again, dude, I'll go somewhere else. Like, my antidepressant is that I'm still alive. Like, I am pumped. And even my uncle, who's an MD, a psychiatrist, he said, you know, most heart attack victims, they do, like, it is good to get on antidepressants after. And I kind of told him too, I'm like, dude, I'm not most. Like, I'm not having that attitude. I am not depressed. Like, I was in the cardiac ICU laying there, like, not knowing how crippled I'm gonna be. I faced dark thoughts and times like that, but it's not the way to meet adversity in life. Adversity, if you can view adversity as opportunity, your life will be a great life, no matter what happens to you. And you will be a deep person of integrity and character. It's easier said than done, but if you just remember the obstacle is the way. You know, my cousin gave me a book termed The Obstacle is the Way, and it's kind of like an amalgamation of stories of people pushing through adversity, but really just the phrase, the obstacle is the way. If you can tell yourself that when anything happens, even if you get in a car wreck and it's your fault, minor things like that, and you just want to whine and bitch about it, like, no, learn from it, grow from it, use it. And I think just from the support of my family and all the prayers and just Dr. Von Meter and just the positivity around me, I was able to adopt that attitude early on in the recovery. And I think because of that, not just the hyperbarics, not just my collateralization, but the attitude of I will not let this defeat me. It does something beyond in your mind. It happens to your body too. Every cell knows what you're fighting for. It's a positive fight. And it's just so interesting to think that with the wrong personality, you know, I could have gotten on those antidepressants and I wouldn't have been biking as hard as I could every day. I wouldn't have been walking and rooting myself in barefoot in the soil every day and getting out in the sun and going swimming in Lake Pontchartrain to get dirty, like doing all those things. I wouldn't have been that way. And I don't think without, you know, having that mindset of the obstacle is the way in life, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And it's just, like I said, if someone could come down and say, we're going to do it all again and you don't have to go through this and your heart will be fine, it'll be just like it was before. You can be whatever kind of athlete you want. You can be 30-meter diver again. You can do whatever you want. Deal? I would say no. I'd say, fuck it. Let's do the whole thing again. I'll go through the Iron Man again. I'll gut it out again. I'll go through all of it. And I really would not change a thing. Not a single part of it, just because it's been such a huge growth experience for me. And the person I am now, I like the person I was before. I wasn't, you know, a bad person, wasn't, a negative kind of individual. Most people know me, know that, but I'm a better person now, like physically, spiritually, mentally, and I have the attitude now too, and I'm getting there to where I'm gonna be a better endurance athlete now in the future than I even was going into the Ironman. And, you know, just the idea that that's even possible just fuels me. And like I said, every day when I wake up, I just want to run. Because one of the darkest moments of this whole thing was walking on the levee. You know, I get these walks in every day, and this is a couple weeks out from the heart attack where I'm such an active person. It was a struggle to become inactive like I had to because, you know, my parents would tell me I got to take a nap every day at 3:00, and I'm just like, I don't take naps. Like I haven't taken a nap in 20 years. Like it's a nap, you know? And
my fucking 6-year-old.
My mom and I were walking on the levee, and here comes some guy jogging, but not not jogging, he's running, he's pushing it, he's huffing and puffing. This guy's getting after it. And I'm looking at him like, God, I hope one day I can do that again. I hope I can just get to where I can push myself. Even if I'm, like I said, I'm on 13-minute miles, I'm huffing and puffing. I want to just
the feeling of exertion.
The feeling of like testing yourself.
Yeah.
And the fact that like
to know you're struggling, to know you're consciously inducing struggle.
And then to at that point to see that guy and to know that like there's a chance I might never be able to do that again. You know, there was always, I stayed positive through it, but like in any trial, there's the devil and the angel on either side, and there was definitely a part of me,
Fuck yeah.
I hate to admit it, that was like,
Fuck
I had to face the idea that like I'll never be in the water again, never be able to die. But then the other side of me, like the real me, was like, even if I can't go to 100 feet, I'll fucking snorkel and maybe go like 15 feet and do quick breath holds. And I found myself,
and then who knows where that goes, you know?
Right, like I'm gonna inch by inch, I'm gonna get over this, or I'm gonna do something. That's not the end, you know. And I think that's just an important message for people to hear, is that just being positive and believing that good things are going to happen if you keep doing what you're supposed to do and believing in yourself and believing in your goal. It's going to happen. The universe will make it happen. And it couldn't be more true with my story. You know, there's not a single cardiologist that will look at my case and say that it makes sense. It doesn't make sense. I've not met one yet that will tell you that my story makes sense medically. I think a lot of it I attribute to the hyperbaric chamber, and that's still like considered fringe medicine in cardiology, but it's a miracle. And like I said, miracles to me it can be like a really intricate thing, to where I met Keith Von Meter 6 years ago when he asked me if I wanted to do hyperbaric research with pigs, and I almost didn't do it. And then we became kind of friendly, and then again, my brother challenged me to the Iron Man. So now I'm like training for this heart attack that was going to happen anyway. And it's all these little things that add up. That's the miracle. Yeah. It's intricate. It's not simple. And just like, to me, like I experienced God in the ocean and stuff. And to be like, last week I'm in the middle of this tuna bait ball. That's the miracle of life for me. Like, it's so obvious to me. I don't have a question of the beauty of life or souls or God or any of that, because I've seen it and I've felt it. And I think, that's when I say that I wouldn't change any of this. Even I'd go through all of it again, and I can tell you, like, I'm a pretty gritty motherfucker, and I faced a lot of pain. Mental, but the pericardial pain, the Dressler syndrome was severe physical pain. Post-heart attack for like 8 to 10 weeks with an unknown duration, you know. The doctor kind of told me it usually goes away.
Just cut it out.
Yeah, it's kind of like, sorry, man, I know it's bad kind of thing. But again, I would do it all again, because the obstacle is the way. And once it was the opportunity, I am a person who loves extreme challenges, and then here I was faced with the most extreme challenge, not the Iron Man with the heart attack, recovering from this massive heart attack. And
like the descent, the ultimate descent after the amazing climb.
Exactly, like the uphill nature of, you know, like looking back on those journals, those writings that when I reflect back on them, it's just powerful and moves, like my own words move me to think that like I was writing this, like crazy asshole thinks he's gonna recover from this devastating heart attack and like become a free diver again and be able to go on a run like we just did and to do all these things. And I really don't think it would have happened if I wasn't able to have that attitude. And I don't attribute it all to myself. You know, I have great family, friends, girlfriends. Like I had so much support around me that helped me stay positive, you know. And then the hyperbarics, and it's just an amalgamation of things that have happened over the past 8 or 9 months. And like I said, it's changed me to every fiber, every cell in my body. I feel is different now, in a good way. And I wouldn't change a fucking moment of it. I'd go through it all again. It's easy to say that, but like I said, if God came down here right now and asked me, you could have all this just go away, and you can have your heart back to where it is right now, and you can dive in and do it all again, and we don't have to, or you can go through it again and have it and be who you are now. What do you choose? I would 100% choose to go in that race again, hit the swim, hit the heart attack, gut through the bike, gut through the thing, 9 days in the ICU, all the anguish, all the trials. I feel lucky that I got to go through all that, because when you come out of the other side of that, something like that, and I learned that in high altitude climbing. Like every big mountain I've ever climbed, I wasn't the same person when I returned than when I left. And that's kind of why you do climbs.
Of course.
To have those experiences. And, like I said, I think when I finally let the world know on social media what had happened to me, if you look at the post, I said something along the lines of like, I've always been a person who loved extreme challenges, and like what could be more extreme of a challenge than to try to get to where I actually am now. I'm near the summit. Like I've made it back. I'm back to freediving. I'm back to running. I'm back to just living a full life. Anything I want to do. I have no restrictions on my life. And that is just like a medal of honor that I wear my whole life. It's like a tattoo that it's just part of me now. And it's like I have this superhuman mentality from having overcome it and just knowing. And that's why I love that we're doing this interview, is because it's in everyone.
Yeah.
Human will is the most powerful and most amazing thing on this planet.
The will to live. The will to live.
The will to live, but even beyond that, the freaking will that people have to go climb mountains. You don't have to, that's not living. Why are you doing it? Why would you do it? Why would you run 100 miles? Human will is, if you're looking for proof of God or proof of a higher power, look no further than the freaking nature of human will. Look at the guy who survived 438 days in a panga. Look at that guy. Look at these other feats of human will is really the most remarkable miracle on the whole planet. Of all the amazing things in the animal kingdoms and in outer space and whatever, to me, human will is the greatest of all. And I'm like living proof of that.
Yeah.
It's just it's been a wild ride, and like I said, I would not change a single thing. I literally would go through it again, put me back at the start line, and let's do it again. I wouldn't want to,
right.
But I wouldn't trade
the
time and the experiences I had from that moment when I thought I was having a panic attack in the swim to now. Just the depth I've had to crawl into my own soul and, climb my way out of this pit to where I am now. Like, it's invaluable.
Oh, God. Yeah, man. I'd say, I don't know what to say. I'm fucking floored. Like to sit and listen.
It's a wild story, man. I like to tell it too, because I feel like it's uplifting for anyone to hear it.
Uplifting, I don't know if there's enough dignity in the word to say that, and miracle, like you said, does get thrown around a lot, right? But like, is the miracle, like you said, the building up of everything, and it becomes the culmination of all the preparation of all the things and the reasoning to be able to survive the incidents? Maybe, but like, to me, like, that is a human when it's fully functioning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when you take away all the restraints, all the variables, all the toxins, all the whatever's, the hindrances, and say like, live or fucking die.
That's the miracle.
Like, that's the power of the human being. right?
And that's the miracle. That's what I'm saying, like human will. When you strip everything away and you just want to survive, and like what people can go through, it's just unfathomable. It's great. Like you see animals do freaky stuff in nature. A one-legged lion that just still kills and he does whatever. An old wolf that still takes down caribou and he's missing all his teeth and things like that. It's impressive what humans do. The freaky things that humans do, it even outweighs everything in the animal world. And I think that is, like, to me, the most fascinating thing on the planet is what humans are capable of when they give it their all. And when they get, like you said, strip everything else away, all the BS in life and all the clutter and all the crap, and like what's down deep in our souls and what we're capable of, like that is the miracle of life beyond anything else.
I define the word courage by being afraid, acknowledging the fear, and moving forward in spite of that, right? Like, that's to me what being courageous is. I don't know if animals, I can't say they can't, but like when you talk about will and the difference and what enhances like the prestige of human will is that you have to be afraid in these things. It's not about, like, you had to have been afraid. You had to have been fucking terrified, even if the devil's small. You know, like, there is fear, there is doubt, there is skepticism, there is what they are saying, what the world is saying, what your own mind is trying to say to you, right? And to say, like, fucking am afraid, man. Like, I'm afraid I'll never, I mean, forget about being an athlete. Like, what's my quality of life going to be? What's my future going to be? Am I going to play with my kids? What's my practice? I mean, everything that now becomes circles within the circle, right? To think like, fucking A, right, I'm scared. And to have to sit there and say, well, I can die, I can wither away, I can become
nothing. Take the antidepressants.
Take the SSRIs, right? Do what they are telling me to do because it's what they're telling me to do.
Yeah, I had a heart attack and now my life is going to be different, you know? And it's interesting, a lot of like my family members that have all the right intentions, they were like, you know, now after the heart attack, and not necessarily my parents or immediate family members, but people who do care about me and do know me well, they said, you know, now I think it's time you kind of calm down a little bit and you don't need to do all this adventure sports and do all these things. And I bit my tongue at the time, but it fueled me. I'll be honest with you. I looked at him and I wanted to say, you don't fucking know me. I'm not that guy. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the things I love to do, or I'm going to die trying. And, you know, I understand their intent too is to say, you know, you wound up in this situation and you wouldn't have been here necessarily if you weren't an extreme athlete and all these other things, but you are who you are, man. And the closer you get to your real self, the better your life will be, regardless of your health or anything else that comes in the way of it. And there's like just a particular person that kind of told me her husband had a heart attack, and you know, he doesn't do like the things he used to do, the extreme sports, but his life is still very much fulfilled. And you know, I took it to heart. I looked at her and I said, okay, I appreciate that. And thank you.
Yeah.
But then, you know, that week when I'm trying to run 3 miles and I'm 10, 12 minute miles, I'm suffering through it, jogging. I'm thinking about her. And I'm thinking, that was your husband, but that's not me. That's not me. And not to discredit him at all. I'm sure he's happy with it.
What's the standard? Like when someone says you can or shouldn't, or like what are you comparing me to?
Right, exactly.
You know, like what is the standard you're trying to hold me to? Like,
and it was the people that I was closest to, the people who really know me. They knew you don't tell me that because
I remember when we were talking, and like you're like, hey, I did this today, and I was like, keep going, like good, you know, awesome, or just sending you like fucking chakras or whatever, like, and you were like, hey, you were. I don't want to say humble about it, but you were like kind of down. Like I could tell you wanted more, right? You were like, yeah, the times kind of sucked. I didn't feel it. I was like, dude, don't fucking worry. Just keep going, dude. You know, like fuck them. And you were even talking about that, like, and was like, dude, you know what this is. You know what this is saying. And like I say this to people now, like clients. One of the biggest problems we face as human beings is trying to convince our minds of something that our hearts know to be a lie. In life, in health, fucking money, work, social, romance, whatever you want to say, like one of the biggest problems we cause ourselves is trying to convince our minds of something that our hearts know to be a lie. When you try to go against that, when you try to step outside of what I call conscience congruence, you fucking feel it, dude. Like, feeling is understanding.
You're separating from your true self.
Yeah, like when you come off of that kind of alignment and veer off the course of like what your compass is trying to tell you where to be, that's regret. Regret is the best guideline. Like, you're talking about going back through that shit, dredging yourself back through all the pain. Imagine the regret you would have if you didn't.
Yeah.
That's the anchor point, right? Like, to be able to say, like...
I think, to your point, the reason that I say that, like, I would go through it all again is because from where I was the day before that Ironman to where I am now, much closer to, like, my truest self. And I don't dislike the person I was going into that race, I don't have a lot of negative things to say about that person, but I'm closer to, like, my truest self now, much closer, because a lot of stuff just stripped away. Things I used to care about, I don't care about anymore. Things that I do care about, I care about more intensely now. It was able to, like, melt certain things away from me that I didn't need.
You burn the fat off your soul.
Burn the fat off my soul, and I'm just closer. My compass is just more dialed in than it's ever been, and I think that's why I keep saying I'd go through it all again, is because
the risk of not being who you are to change anything that got you here.
Right, it's like a curiosity if I just did that Ironman, and, like, my brother was sore for a couple of days, blah, blah, back at it, whatever. Like, who would I be now? It wouldn't be someone I dislike or I have adverse feelings towards, but it wouldn't be who and what I am now. And I'm proud of that. And just where I'm going from here, God only knows. I feel like my soul is just on fire, like, in the best way possible. And it wasn't always like that. I always have been like a go-get-em, spiritual, gritty person, but it's different now. Like, it's who I am in my essence. Like I said, I feel like every cell in my body changed. And maybe it happened in that hyperbaric chamber, or maybe it happened from the literal thousands of people that were saying prayers for me during this whole thing. Like, who knows? No one knows why this happened and why. All they can say is cardiologists can't explain it. No one can explain it. You can explain it maybe through theoretical with the hyperbarics, maybe through the collateralization, the fact that I was young. But if you look at my story on paper, it doesn't make sense medically. And I think that's the beauty of it, is everyone thinks they have everything figured out, and then all of a sudden I'm free diving at 80 feet again, no problem.
Running
8 months out.
An hour ago, as we were just trotting, talking while we're running. And
just, like I said, man, and you don't, I guess the message should be, it's like, you don't need to go through what I went through to, maybe you just need to hear it.
I had somebody ask me that the other day on a podcast, like, what advice can you give to someone else who's like doing a mindset or entrepreneurship kind of podcast, and what can you give someone, like, would you tell them to help prevent make mistakes like you did? And I would say, there's a big part of me that for sympathy or for, like, good-heartedness would say, don't do this, avoid this, but at the same time, man, like, it's the suffering.
Yeah.
Like, the road to self-mastery is paved in fucking suffering, dog. Like, you're never gonna become, we talked about it on the run, the greatest Stoics, the greatest thinkers, intellectuals, theologians of the past, they all used 3 things: isolation, prolonged fasting, and extended treks in order to consciously induce suffering for personal growth.
Yeah, if you look at my experience,
it's what it was. Chosen suffering. Like, easy ways out of quitting, giving up, not pursuing that again, telling your mind, all right, fine, taking your foot off the accelerator, taking the SSRIs, listening to them. But to consciously choose the path of resistance, like, you were given the 2 options, and I say this a lot to people, and how it's really only one. Meaning, option A, things stay as they are, status quo, you continue feeling the way you do, maybe you'll never feel better, who knows. Option B, you don't do that. You choose this, which is going to be hard, arduous, strenuous. Who knows how long it's going to fucking take. The results are not guaranteed. Maybe you get better, maybe you don't. Maybe you die, maybe it gets worse. But that droplet, 1 part per million of maybe, does not exist in option A.
No.
And to me, that means like there is no fucking option A.
Yeah.
It's that and that's it. So if you can look at that, and I say this in like diving with people, talk about panic and fear. Fear is healthy, panic is deadly. Like when someone says, what do you do when you see the big fish or sharks or whatever underwater? I'm like, well, there's 2 choices. 1, you can fucking panic and shit your pants, which does nothing to help you. And 2 is, I'm afraid, I'm scared. Again, identify fear and you deal with it as you need to deal with it. But option A is not really an option because panic cannot occur. You have to try and take the maybe micron of hope, the will to live, the possibility of change, of improvement, etc. is worth more than all that panic and guaranteed fucking failure. That's for damn sure. The
one maxim that like I said it multiple times on this interview, like that, if you can look at life as the obstacle is the way, and you have to understand what that means. It's deeper than just those words. It means that everything that matters in your life, every good thing, everything that you'll look back on when you're an old man on your deathbed, and the things you're proud of, none of them would have been easy. And that's the fact. And that's why the obstacle is the way, is because you grow from those changes. And if you're able to view adversity as an opportunity, you'll never have a bad day in your life. You know, you can actually change your mindset to where when I have like a tough case or a personal problem, you know, I slow my mind down and I remind myself, like, here we go. It's a challenge. You know, I got another challenge. How am I going to overcome this? And then every time you overcome a challenge, you grow. Even if it's a small thing, small or big. And it's usually, you know, exponential in my case just because it was so extreme. But again, like going back to courage, I wouldn't say to look back on this whole experience, like the most courage I had through the whole thing was not pushing myself through the Iron Man. I mean, you could call that idiot just being stupid, honestly, or just being macho, or just not being in tune enough with my body, or whatever. Probably from just gritty climbs, like knowing.
Yeah, you didn't know it was a fucking heart attack. You're just
or I
being
would
an
have stopped.
You're being an athlete. You got a little pain, you push through it.
But to be able to experience that and getting back to like the Iron Man itself, I don't consider pushing through that courage, you know, going through all this stuff. The way you define courage, the one moment through this whole thing where I would say I had courage is when I look back at that journal and it says, I don't care what everyone else is saying. I don't care what my ejection fraction is. I'm not going to be defined by a number. I'm going to do this. Like, I can read back, I'll look at that sometimes and be like, that's who I am. I wrote this. This is not bullshit. I wrote this in my darkest day, and it wasn't, I wish I could just get better. I wish, why this happened to me? And, you know, it wasn't that. I just, you know, I white-knuckled myself and I just said,
fuck you.
Yeah, fuck this. No one knows me. No one knows what I'm capable of. No one knows what anybody's capable of. No one knows what's going to happen. So you can't let the lights go out like that. You know, it would have been real easy for me to, like you said, take the antidepressants, gain weight, give up on my athletic career, settle down, not worry about so much about free diving and climbing and traveling and all these other things I love to do so much, and just move into like a more sedentary part of my life. And it wouldn't have been wrong to do that, but it wouldn't be me either. And I'd be someone else. And I don't want to be that person.
And I don't would be wrong.
And that
by
exactly,
not being you.
Exactly. And this whole thing is, like I said, it's burned the fat off my soul, and it's just put me so much closer to the person that I'm meant to be, that I want to be. And it really is more of like this isn't the end of the road. It's a catalyst for like the future. You know, like I said, I'm pushing myself harder sometimes in the gym now than I ever did before, because I can feel it. Pushing yourself, that is a gift. To have that taken away from you and then to get it back is the ultimate gift of the whole world. Like for me to lose freediving and to face never being able to do it again, you know, it sounds like kind of self-absorbed almost, to be like, why does this guy care so much about freediving? You know, a healthy guy, a great life, great family, I got everything to be happy about. Like, why is he so obsessed with this? Like, it's because that's who I am. To lose that, I would have lost like a lot of myself, like my true self. And really, the first free dive that I made, you know, I had been holding my breath a little bit, like way too early on in the heart attack. I was already seeing, like, can I hold my breath? Definitely not.
They can't check me for this. You know?
Yeah, I can hold my breath. Then no one's paying attention. And the first couple dives, like in the Gulf, same thing, man. I just remember on the ride home, just thinking, hey, you know, the God and the universe, they gave it all back to me. I got it all back, and it's just the most incredible feeling, dude. I feel like I live in heaven. I feel like I'm on cloud nine always. And you don't have to go through hell to experience heaven. Like, you're in it right now. Who knows what happens in the next life, but you got this life, and it's pretty damn good. We're living in a good time. Like, everyone wants to complain, global warming, climate change. This is the greatest time ever. You have all the advantages of technology in the world, and there's still wild places. You can still go places where almost no man has gone before. So when people want to complain, it's always greener on the other side of the pasture, but it really isn't, man. It's all mindset. Everything is mindset.
Yep.
And everything is
the lens you see the world through.
Exactly. And I think, luckily for me, I had enough experiences, just naturally who I was before, of like pushing myself and like enjoying challenges, that I was kind of set up to handle this well. And like I said, it's just a fascinating thing if you just look at the whole story from when I was 18, I did my first mountain climb, you know, like to where I am now. And maybe that's why I'm still alive, is because I found something in the mountains and the ocean that made me want to stay in good shape and made me want to, you know, be like a physical specimen. And if I hadn't chosen that route, I'd be dead, because I was going to have that heart attack no matter what. And I think, like, you know, that's the beauty of it. The beauty of the whole story, the beauty of the whole experience is that I was able to go through something that most people would just feel sorry for me about, you know. And like I said, I'm happy it happened, which sounds crazy. I have 2 stents in my heart. Like, I went through hell. I'm not saying that, you know, you need to go through something like this, but just take my word for it. It's easy to take my word for it, but you know, going back to just, if you're able mentally to face adversity with a positive attitude, your whole life will change, you know. And I think just the way I was able to look at everything in a positive light, at least I'm still alive. At least I can walk. At least I can jog now. Damn, now I'm able to push myself. I'm running 8-minute miles. Like, if you just take small steps, it's like we talked about earlier, the famous African saying on Kilimanjaro. Yeah. You know, I climbed Kilimanjaro years ago on the Western Breach, and there's a famous saying amongst the climbers and porters there, pole, pole, which just means slowly, slowly. And I wore that bracelet, you know, from a week out of my heart attack. And it just reminded me that, like, the biggest mountains, they're climbed 1 foot at a time, over time. And if you take that mindset and you're positive about it, anything is possible. Literally, anything is possible.
Well, dude, thank you.
Thank you, man.
Like, fucking hell. Yeah, man, it's a beautiful story. I'm so
It
happy
is.
for you. You know, like it's all over you. You exude it. It's infectious to be around.
Yeah, man, it's
palpable.
It's it's like a palpable thing, dude. I can't
not share it.
I cannot share it. I can't not be happy like all the time, dude.
Yeah.
Even when I get down a little bit, I'm just like, what am I down about some bullshit? Like, life is so good, and it's easy to say that, and I understand, you know, people really do deal with like deep clinical depression. I can't say that, you know, I've experienced that level of like genetic depression or whatever. I'm not discounting that. You know, I've known people that are depressed and try to talk them out of it, and it's not the same as what I went through. But a positive mindset can go to any length, any possible. Anything's possible with a positive mindset, and there's just no doubt about that. I'm living proof.